The African Union, AU, is a continental union consisting of 55 member states located on the continent of Africa. The AU was officially launched in 2002 as a successor to the Organization of African Unity. The stated mission of the AU is to achieve greater unity and solidarity among African countries and peoples, to defend state sovereignty, territorial integrity, and independence, to accelerate African states' political and socioeconomic integration, and to promote and defend African common positions on issues of concern to the continent and its peoples. But are they doing so? The African Union is made up of over a dozen bodies, each having its mission and mandate. Some are in charge of planning and proposals, while others are in charge of implementing and monitoring policies. The Assembly is the African Union's decision-making body, and it is made up of the heads of state or their accredited representatives. Before important policies presented by other bodies can be enacted, they must be voted on in the Assembly. With all the crises that have been going on in the African continent lately, the AU has remained silent. In 2021, the African Union announced the suspension of Mali and threatened to slap sanctions on the West African country following the military coup. The AU, as mentioned above mission, is to achieve greater unity and solidarity among African countries. So, why is it that when all these coups are happening, all it does is suspend the countries involved? Widespread protests also sparked in Zimbabwe by a dramatic increase in the price of fuel in 2019, which impacted the cost of living. In retaliation, security forces launched a murderous assault that resulted in the demise of 12 individuals and the arbitrary detention of over 600 more. The crackdown resulted in numerous women being raped and many others suffering from crippling injuries. Most people who are arrested do not receive a fair trial in court, oftentimes as a result of the arbitrary denial of bail. Following the protests, the internet was also shut down, seemingly to stop people from organizing or supporting peaceful protests. The AU was still silent on this matter. More than 20,000 individuals fled the Democratic Republic of the Congo into the neighboring countries of Congo-Brazzaville and Uganda as a result of the general election in 2019, which was marked by observable tension and isolated incidents of deadly violence. Over 500 civilians were taken out and 59 mass graves were discovered in Yumbi, according to a UN investigation. Following the elections, the authorities shut down several media sites and launched an offensive against online and mobile messaging. In July 2013, soldiers led by Marshal Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, the country's current ruler, overthrew President Mohamed Morsi. The AU responded by suspending the Arab country. There has not been a single reaction condemning or calling for an end to the ongoing gross and widespread human rights violations in Zimbabwe from the AU. When the Sudanese overthrew President Omar al-Bashir in 2019 and placed him under army detention, the African Union quickly asked the generals to hand over power to civilians, but its warnings were ignored. Some Africans argue that the AU is always concerned when there are solvable problems in the continent, but when the real problems come, they shy away. Most of the coups going on now are a result of Africans standing up and saying no to the West, especially France. The AU is aware that France is exploiting African countries, but has done nothing so far. How then are they making African countries great? Africans need to stop thinking about what the other places want, what China wants, and what Europe wants, and start the process of generating Africa's narrative. The African Union became the second regional grouping to be admitted to the group of 20 leading industrialized and developing nations as a full permanent member. They're happy that they've been added to the G20. What makes them happy is validation and inclusion from foreign powers, instead of handling their issues at home. However, there are some benefits the AU will bring to Africa from joining the G20. The idea of letting the AU join the G20 is to bring more African voices to the table, instead of them being the recipients of decisions, norms, and rules by countries and institutions that are far more advanced. It will also help unify African countries if they have a voice through the African Union. The AU joining the G20 would give African countries greater access to resources and opportunities, such as trade, investment, and technology. This would help to boost Africa's economic growth and development. They could also advocate for greater investment in African infrastructure, such as roads, railways, and ports. This would help to boost trade and economic growth across the continent. Is this going to make the AU start looking out for African countries? Various civil society groups have attacked the AU regularly for failing to fulfill its chief objective of ensuring peace and security on the continent. They have not been resolute enough in addressing the crisis in Sudan, Tigray, or the Sahel. Africans are waiting and wondering whether the AU would carry on as usual or address these crises, especially those who have been impacted by their government's ruthless crackdowns. Based on past evidence, there is little reason for optimism. They have been criticized for several reasons. For instance, in 2015, the AU was presented with overwhelming evidence of gross human rights violations being committed in Burundi, where President Pierre Nkurunziza was unleashing a brutal crackdown on human rights in his bid for a controversial third term in office. The AU expressed the intention to decisively stop the abuses, only to backtrack before it could take any concrete action. Through the East African community, it chose the path of mediation, a process that has completely ignored accountability for the gross human rights violations committed in the country since 2015. Millions of civilians in South Sudan continue to be killed, displaced, and subjected to sexual violence with no justice in sight. Praying for peace is insufficient. It is time for the AU to drastically alter how it handles egregious crimes against humanity and other human rights breaches that occur during times of armed conflict. The AU must be viewed as supporting those battling for justice and their liberties by its deeds and words, not the other way around. Talking about peace without assuring justice and the protection of human rights runs the risk of turning into support for submission. We keep striving for a better African continent. We have come to the end of this video. Do you share our idea on the AU being a toothless bulldog? Let us know what you think in the comments. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the New Tourist channel. Make sure you turn on notifications too, so you never miss out on any new video. Thanks for watching and see you in our next video.